Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Talk Your Abs Off. I'm your host, Abby Clapper, and today, when this episode comes out, it will be September 1st, which is the start of National Fruit and Veggies Month. So, to kick that off, I am joined today by EC Synkowski. She's the founder of Optimize Me Nutrition. She's also a licensed dietitian, nutritionist with a background in biomechanical engineering, plus master's degrees in environmental science and nutrition and functional medicine. She's also the creator of the 800-gram challenge, which is a simple yet powerful approach to eating more fruits and vegetables. And we are diving into it today. Welcome, EC. I'm so excited to have you.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on.
Now, something else about EC, she also has a podcast called The Consistency Project, which we'll dive into a little bit later as well, but it has so much great nutrition information. I've been able to dive into a few of them, and EC, it is absolutely brilliant. I love listening to it.
Thank you. Too kind.
Now, this 800-gram challenge, something that I think that my listeners are going to get the most out of it, this is something that is so simple, it is sustainable, it's backed by science, which is something my listeners, we're all about that over here. So I'm just so excited to talk about it. So would you just kind of introduce the idea of the 800-gram challenge for us?
Yeah, it is super simple. It's to eat 800 grams by weight of the fruits and veggies of your choice, and then you continue to eat whatever else you want. So you still have your protein foods, you still have your snack foods, but you just place this priority on eating 800 grams of fruits and vegetables each day. A lot of people don't know what 800 grams is, so just for a quick reference, it's about 6 cups. And it also includes some things that people aren't expecting would count, such as beans and potatoes and corn, and even things like sauerkraut or kimchi. So there's a lot of different olives, avocados. So a lot of things besides maybe just like apples and broccoli.
Okay. Well, I think that's great. And it's funny because as a personal trainer, I've been a personal trainer for a while. One of my biggest focuses with people is getting people to eat protein, which is something that you've also talked about, is making sure that we're getting enough protein. But then over time, I've realized like, oh, wow, a lot of us, a lot of my clients, even myself, most days I'm like, am I really eating enough fruits and vegetables, which is just as important as that protein?
Yeah. And I think, I don't know. I mean, if you look at some of the averages, I would say a lot of people are further away from the fruit and vegetable targets than they are the protein targets. Especially here in the States, I think the average intake for protein is about 91 grams. And also considering that 78, 77, I think, percent of Americans do not do the 2 strength training sessions a week. Relative to their needs, they probably need the fruits and veggies more than the protein. And not to get too far afield, because I know you want to talk about fruits and veggies, but I do think there's this kind of notion out there, I'll just eat more protein and grow muscles, where they actually have to be putting the time and effort in the gym. And that's really the stimulus more so than necessarily just eating more protein. So yeah, I love protein. I think it's great. It's definitely part of the plan for my clients, but we're going to start with the fruits and veggies.
I love that. Yeah, you're absolutely right. If we're not doing the work, we're not going to see the results. But at least for the people who want to maintain kind of where they are, getting that protein is super important.
For sure.
So for your 800-gram challenge, I'm so curious what inspired you to create it, and what was the problem that you were trying to solve when you came up with this idea?
Yeah, so always been involved with nutrition, even during my days with CrossFit. And so I was playing with a couple different diet ideas at the time. In fact, I was looking at kind of this idea of how do I measure quality in the diet? So the idea being when somebody says they eat clean, what does that really mean? And can we measure it? And so I was playing with like looking at potassium in the diet. There was also there is a book called How Not to Die. And Michael Greger lists, I think it's 12 different things to eat every day. I was playing with that type of concept. That was kind of floating around. And this was during my master's in nutrition. And I came across a then new study in 2017 that was looking at fruit and vegetable consumption relative to health outcomes. And so what they found was that risk went down when people consumed 800 grams of fruits and vegetables each day, and the risk went down in, cancer, stroke, cardiovascular disease, and all causes of dying.
Wow.
So because I had been working on this other kind of idea, and then I saw the study, I was like, well, this is really interesting. What if I try to eat 800 grams by weight of fruits and vegetables each day and sort of see what happens? And so that was summer of 2017. And I played around with the idea for a while, actually 6 months collecting data. What are the rules? Does tofu count? It doesn't. What about potatoes? They do. Looking at the macros, looking at the fiber, looking at the calories, and just sort of seeing what it was. And at the end of 6 months, I was like, wow, this was a really simple way that I was able to consistently keep my diet quality high, but still was sustainable enough that I could do it with travel and vacations and all that other stuff that life throws at us.
Wow, that is amazing. Now, how does that, because I know CrossFit nutrition is like completely
Mm.
like different, I would say, than like how
Mm.
a lot of people eat. So how does that kind of match up with the CrossFit world?
Yeah, so when I was at CrossFit anyway, we taught kind of these two big pillars of nutrition that there has to be a focus on quality, but also quantity. And so it can overlay quite nicely. I think what happens a lot is people focus on one at the expense of the other. That maybe I'll go all paleo. And so they'll just be thinking, okay, I just have to exclude all these foods in my diet and maybe even get hyper neurotic or obsessive about it. Or maybe they'll even slip into like, the paleo brownies and wonder why they're not losing any weight because they're doing all of this kind of fake healthy stuff. So there's kind of some of those things over indexing on quality. And then there's also the people that might over index on quantity. And that is, the if it fits your macros, like I'll weigh out my beer and pork rinds so long as I hit my numbers. And look, I've done both of those extremes. So that's why I can joke about them. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we need both. It turns out that quality and quantity are important for the diet. And that is what CrossFit preached. But I think just within a large community like that, you're always going to have trends and viral ideas. And so people might have gone down two of those paths that I mentioned, kind of looking at one versus both of them.
Absolutely. I think you kind of are mentioning, different trends and things that people are doing, which are always going to be here. They've been here
Mm,
since the beginning of time and they will continue. But what I think is so great about the 800-gram challenges, it's so realistic. It's
mm,
also, I mean, maybe I don't know if you call it a diet or maybe
mm-hmm,
a way of eating, but I
mm-hmm,
just think it's so realistic that it's way less intimidating than,
mm,
someone who's going to do the carnivore diet and just eat just meat for, however long they're going to do that. So, what are you finding is what other kinds of benefits are you seeing in people who are consistently participating
mm.
in this challenge?
Yeah. Yeah, and I do like to mention it is sort of my first step. I actually do kind of this three-pillar method to my clients. And so we look at other things beyond that. But I think so many people are swirling on all these ideas out there that this is definitely like, okay, let's get started. This is simple. This is sustainable. Let's get going. But yeah, so some of the benefits, I think what I was a little bit surprised about, it's kind of silly now in hindsight, but a lot of it is the mindset shift. I mean, I was coming kind of out of this academic space and I've always been into biochemistry and I have all this background there. So I'm thinking about, okay, we're getting all these nutrients and we're getting the right, helping balance the calories. And then so many people were just talking about how freeing it was that I really flipped the script on dieting with this approach because they're not thinking about all the things they can't have and they're instead thinking about what they can add. And so I think I kind of underestimated that. And I think it also just sort of reflect my lack of experience coaching other people. And that a lot of what you can do in the beginning as a nutrition coach is help people understand that they can do this nutrition thing. And that's actually way better than them necessarily like hitting their macros on day one. So the psychological aspect is really big. The other thing was, again, most of the early adopters were in the CrossFit community because I had just resigned at that point. And so your clients will like this, but definitely the early wins are more energy and better performance in the gym. And I think people just think about carbs as like fueling their workouts or maybe protein for their muscles, but turns out we need all those micronutrients in all of those processes to, create energy and to also grow muscles. And so this is where I think people aren't expecting a performance bump and then they see it. I definitely do also have people who have weight loss, but I would say that it's kind of been the mindset shift and the more energy, better performance have been kind of the top reports about what it does for people.
Okay. And the mindset piece of it is such a big part. I think a lot of people, when they first get into a health and wellness routine, they're not thinking about changing their mindset. They're thinking about changing their body.
Mm-hmm.
And along the way, we build that mindset. We find that sustainable routine. We find more energy, more confidence that comes along with it. And it kind of changes the mindset over time. Or you have to change your mindset because changing your body can only get you so far. It's really changing how you're thinking about it. And you had a really good podcast episode about body image in women. You had a
Mm.
guest on,
Mm-hmm,
and
mm-hmm.
I just
Around.
listened to that one on the plane the other day, and it resonated so much because so many women we're really focused on how we're looking and not so much how we're feeling, which is if we're feeling good, we're going to be able to do a lot more things. And so I think
Mm.
that brings a really big piece of that mindset into it.
Mm-hmm. Totally. Yeah, and I think once the person can start to identify as a healthy eater and they can do this, it really snowballs versus just sort of think I have to stick to this for 8 weeks, and instead it's like, well, what does this look like for years for you to be able to sustain the results? So you have to build that belief that they can do this and they can follow through. And part of that is just by setting some realistic expectations around diet in the beginning versus all of this restrictive stuff that I think we've all done.
Yeah, and it also builds on itself over time too,
Hmm.
right? So, like, if you start with fruits and vegetables and you can do that for a month, 2 month, 3 months, like you said, you have this pillar system of how you work with
Hmm.
your clients. So I assume after someone is super confident in building their fruits and veggies, then you move on to the next piece, and then they no longer have to worry about getting their fruits and veggies because they're already doing it, and so they can focus on the next thing, and it all just compounds over time.
Exactly, exactly. One thing at a time, and that's yeah. We can't do too much at once, otherwise we quit it 2 weeks later.
Exactly. Now, I'm curious, the 800 grams, how did you
Mhm.
settle on 800 grams as opposed to 500 or 1,000? Where did that number come from?
Yeah, it really was from this study. It's a meta analysis, meaning they pull together research from lots of different studies. They actually pulled together research from 95 different studies. The lead author is Un, I guess, Aune. And it's studies from all over the world. It's not US centric. In fact, it's more studies outside the US than the US itself. And so they've got hundreds of thousands of people that they're looking, and they're looking at their fruit and vegetable consumption and then what happens to their risk in terms of, like I said, stroke, cardiovascular disease, cancer, and all causes of dying. Now, cancer risk went down at 600, but I assume that most people also want to reduce their risk of cardiovascular disease. That's our top killer, as well as all causes of dying. So that's why I went ahead and jumped to the 800 gram number. But I also like to mention that it wasn't just like I saw this one study and was like, okay, that's the number, that's what it has to be. I also spent this time testing it. I compared it also to the US regulations. It fits within it. I'd say it's on the higher end, but it can fit within the US guidelines. And like I said, I also looked at calories. Like when we look at calories of 800 grams, it's about 4 to 500, depending on your choices. And so it's a fraction of the calories that people need. So, and then I tested it myself to see, like, is this something that's actually doable? So it was like kind of sparked by that study, but it also fit with other guidelines. Even you'll hear things like 8 servings of fruits and vegetables a day. It's kind of right within that ballpark type of thing. So I compared it to other recommendations and also tried to prove it out with my own self and sustainability before really kind of pushing it out there as a public idea.
Okay, that makes sense. And it's funny. So when I first came across your account, I heard you on another podcast.
Mm.
And then I followed you immediately because I was
Oh, cool.
looking at all of your stuff and I thought this stuff is gold. And I saw the 800-gram challenge and I tried it. 6 cups, it sounds really easy, until you try to fill 6 cups of, like, what your, different
Mm.
vegetables in your day, and I was finding that I was getting maybe, like, 2 or 3 cups at a
Mm.
time, on,
Hmm.
like, a normal day, and I was
Sure.
like, "Oh my gosh, to be able to get more is, like, crazy." So
Mm.
how do you recommend someone starts if 6 cups or 800 grams feels really overwhelming at first?
Hmm.
Because I know a lot of people who they'll try something, they'll get overwhelmed, and
Hmm.
then they'll lose it. So how do you
Yes.
kind of overcome that piece of it?
Yeah, I also like to remind people that it's not the 800-gram vegetable challenge. It's not the 800-gram broccoli challenge. It's the 800-gram challenge where we're including, like I mentioned, things like potatoes and fruit and olives and avocado and corn and all this other stuff. And we might be getting to it in some of the topics, but I think there's this underlying fear of things like fruit or even things like potatoes kind of in the diet space, such that a lot of people, when they take it on, they're like, no, 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 I'm doing the 800-gram, leafy green challenge. And I'm thinking to myself, well, this is going to be totally overwhelming. And you're going to feel bloated, but oh well, give it a shot. So I think that's the big thing, first of all, is just to remind people of how many things it includes because, you can get to 800 grams on like a medium potato, a pretty good size apple, pretty good size orange, and a banana. Like that's 800 grams. But I think a lot of times people skew really heavy to the leafy green end of things and then they wonder why they can't do it. So that's my first reminder. The next one then is to kind of spread it out throughout the day. I think sometimes people hear challenge in it. And so they like to really, focus on, let me get this big smoothie done. And then they're kind of overwhelmed. Like an 800-gram smoothie is a lot. And it's like, yes, this was meant to be across the day. But one of my main things I do like to kind of get back to the heart of your question is just like you have to figure out a sustainable number. This is not about a perfect number. There's going to be people who are healthy at a lower volume. There's going to be people who sustain a higher volume quite easily. It's more about figuring out what's truly a sustainable number for you because the whole diet is what determines the health of your diet. Even the 800-gram challenge, as much as I love it, cannot guarantee somebody's health. It's going to be everything in your diet. I think it generally shifts people's diet overall to be better in terms of quality and quantity. But let's just say you start out and you figure out, okay, wow, I'm at 400. Maybe you set a stretch goal that I'm going to try to stretch to 500 and see how that goes and then get consistent there versus thinking that, like, the diet perfection will open up once you hit 800.
Right. Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. And there was one other, I had tons of time on my flight the other day and I had
Good.
downloaded a bunch of your podcast episodes. And there was one you were talking about, and I've done an episode on GLP-1s.
Mm-hmm.
And people are using them. And so we're finding ways to adapt to help those people still be able to eat healthy, maintain muscle, all those good things, find strength training. And I think you had mentioned that you had maybe a client or you knew someone who was trying to do the 800-gram challenge. And because when someone's on GLP-1, they're usually not eating as much. And so
Hmm.
they found that they just weren't hungry enough to eat all
Hmm.
800 grams at the end of the day. And you
Yeah.
said something so great. You had said, like, if you're at the end of the day and you're standing in front of the refrigerator and you're trying to like fill yourself with all these fruits and
Yeah.
vegetables, like, is that really realistic? Can you share a little
Yeah.
bit more about that kind of mindset as well?
Yeah, this isn't about, a bag of baby carrots at 11 p.m. just to hit the 800-gram number. It's more about trying to have some sort of target every day to orient the day around. And so it's more about kind of if you get to the end of the day and you're at 400 grams, to take that as a moment of reflection and to think back, like, where could I have made better choices today, than thinking that, again, I'm going to hit 800 grams and that's going to be perfect. The GLP-1s thing, I'm going to go off on a slight tangent there, if you don't mind.
Absolutely.
Interesting. There was like a recent study that got, or a news article that was backed up, was reporting on a study that GLP-1 users on average were reporting about 1,700 calories per day, which is actually kind of, I don't want to say high. It's not high, but it's certainly high enough to include an 800-gram challenge. I think the challenge with the 800-gram challenge and GLP-1s might be if they have some of the side effects, the GI nausea, or even just feeling really full from that. And so this is where I would still encourage somebody on GLP-1s to eat fruits and vegetables, but definitely, again, do not do the 800-gram broccoli challenge. It's fruits and vegetables to include all those other things I've mentioned.
Right. It's so funny because I never really thought about how filling broccoli was until I heard you start to mention it. And I was like, yeah, you're right. When I eat broccoli, like
Yeah.
I am stuffed to the brim. If I'm eating
Right.
like chicken, broccoli, and rice, it's like, oof, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
not going to
We're
fit
not
anything
doing
else.
6 cups of that. Nope.
Absolutely not. So what would you say are some easy hacks for like
Hmm.
actually tracking this 800 grams? Because, people aren't carrying around their weight scales when they go out to
Hmm.
eat, or they're not bringing their measuring cups. So how do you kind of recommend people kind of figure out 800 grams if they're eating out or if they're at, someone else's house or at a party or
Hmm.
something?
Yeah, I definitely don't encourage bringing scales eating out. And so we just use kind of a cup system, but using our hand eye. So a closed adult fist is about a cup, and a cup is about 130 grams. And so that's how we get to the 6 cups and 800 grams. The main exception there is leafy greens. A closed adult fist, about a cup, is only about 25 grams of like lettuce and romaine. So you actually need 5 cups of leafy greens to equal a cup of, let's say, grapes or bell peppers and all that stuff. Now, my perfectionists out there really flinch a lot because they're like, well, a cup of carrots isn't the same weight as a cup of grapes. And you're like, you're correct. But it's going to be close enough such that we get this healthy dose of fruits and veggies each day. It's not so much that you hit exactly 800 today, it's that you hit this volume that's meaningful enough that will start to shift the quality and quantity in your diet. So that hand eye measurement works great. I do love it if people weigh at home because guess what? They get better at estimating when they're out once they kind of start checking themselves at home. But I'm all about realism, sustainability. Like I've done the bringing the scale on the airplane. I've done it bringing out to restaurants. Like nobody does it and you don't have to be healthy. So let's not worry about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I did an episode last month about My Plate, so the
Mm-hmm.
myplate.gov.
Mm-hmm.
What about if someone's like looking at a plate? Because I
Mm-hmm.
think the recommendation, I believe, if I remember correctly, is I think half the plate should
Mm-hmm.
be fruits and veggies. Does
Mm-hmm.
that end up equating to kind of two fists or two cups?
Yeah, it can be. Obviously, plate size, all that stuff. But yeah, it's about half the plate. I think one of the reasons why I really, of course, I'm biased, like my 800-gram challenge is it really sets a number or a benchmark to hit each day. And yeah, you could say it starts to slide a little bit with the fist, but it's pretty close. I've done a lot of measurements on cups and stuff like that to see that it ends up being pretty close. I think the more and more we slide away from having a metric, the more and more it becomes like, well, I'm just going to eat, quote, clean today. I'm just going to eat more
Mm.
fruits and veggies today. And it kind of keeps getting further away from that number. And so I like having something that's really measurable. I get it, half the plate's good, but then how many meals are you having and blah, blah, blah. So I would just lean into either we're doing the weighing and measuring thing or kind of like the 6 cups analogy. But yes, visually speaking, if you have a meal with a couple cups on it, it can often cover about half a plate.
Okay. I like that you mentioned measuring kind of at first because it,
Mm-hmm.
it helps you kind of know what that looks like in the future. I
Mm-hmm.
have a weight scale that I bought. I bought during Amazon Prime days and I was like, I am going to use it. And it has sat in my cupboard, but I really need to get it out because truly we do need to know realistically how much we're eating. I mean, I talk about people tracking their food like in MyFitnessPal.
Mm-hmm.
especially with a lot of my clients. And if we're not logging, the spoonful of what we're testing from dinner, if we're not measuring our salad dressings, if we're not measuring all these things, there's all these hidden calories. So I think knowledge alone, kind of like what you're saying, is the most important thing of really knowing what we're putting in our bodies. So I think that's
Yeah. Yeah, and just to think about it more as like a tool, I actually don't want people to have to weigh and measure forever. I think you people will see it as like this sentence, and instead it's you learn a lot by it, and then hopefully you learn enough to step away. That's my ultimate goal for clients is not to weigh and measure.
mm,
I've weighed a lot of bananas. I can tell you how much a banana weighs without weighing it. You know what I mean? So that's the goal. It's not that you're now signing up to do this forever.
right. Yeah. And that's that sustainable piece too, because realistically,
Exactly.
people aren't going to want to measure their food forever.
Correct. Correct.
So now let's talk about what kind of qualifies or doesn't qualify
Mm.
in the challenge and why. So maybe a couple of ideas like canned fruits and vegetables, baked or fried veggies, juices. Give me
Mhm.
the rundown on what qualifies and what doesn't.
Yeah, cooked, canned, frozen, and fresh are good. Couple caveats there for canned. It's not going to be canned in syrup, so canned in water, and then obviously weigh it drained. Frozen's fine, and you can weigh it when it's like canned, drained or frozen or fresh. It doesn't have to be always raw. Cooked is fine as well. The one exception is not commercially fried, so air fried at home is fine, but we're not going to do French fries from McDonald's. But so yeah, there's a huge amount of variation there, in part again for the sustainability. Like people will get really in the weeds about am I weighing something cooked or raw, and it's like this is not the problem in your diet. Weigh it frozen, eat it, cooked. It's fine. Um, so that's the canned and the cooked type of stuff, not commercially fried. That doesn't count. Also, no juices count because they've removed the fiber. And fiber is something we really want from a gut health perspective, also a filling nature perspective. So if somebody were to make a smoothie at home and they can like weigh the banana and the spinach that might go in, that those grams do count. But if they were to juice those items at home, that does not count. And nor would like a store-bought juice or a store-bought smoothie count because they typically add juice or sugar or other things like that. So I think those are kind of the big ones in terms of the cooking styles, preparation styles, and the big no's. Obviously, the fruits and veggies I mentioned, but things that sometimes people are surprised don't count would be like nuts don't count, grains don't count. Like we said, juices don't count, commercially fried. Those are the big ones, I think.
Okay. And you mentioned, so when we juice something, we are getting
Mm.
rid of the fiber. How
Hmm.
much fiber is someone getting from 800 grams of fruits and
Yeah. Yeah, it's tough to say because it really depends on their choices. Like if someone skews heavy towards beans, avocado, berries, we can be upwards of 30 grams of fiber, which is huge. I mean, that's about a target that somebody would need in a day, and they're getting that from maybe 25% of the calories. So that would be kind of monster amount of fiber. Conversely, if they really skew towards watermelon and cantaloupe, they might be down in the single digits if that's all of their 800 grams. I would say on average, if we look across just a typical mixed fruits and veggies, people are getting about 10 to 15 grams of fiber. Now, that's really good. Now, people might be thinking, well, shoot, if I need to get to 30 grams of fiber, why don't all my fruits and veggies do it? Remember, those 800 grams of fruits and veggies are only giving you about 20 to 25% of your calories. So to get close to 50% of your fiber needs from a quarter of your caloric needs is actually quite good.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And then the rest of their fiber is maybe coming from their other grains throughout the day.
Yeah, grains, nuts, even some processed products are going to have some fiber grams to add up to their total. Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, I work with people who have experiences in, intermittent fasting
Mm.
or, doing keto, things like that. So how would this approach fit in with other nutrition strategies like counting macros or counting calories or intermittent fasting or anything like that?
Yeah, they just pick the fruits and veggies that work for them and they overlay it. Like if you're intermittent fasting, you just eat the fruits and veggies in your window. If you're doing keto, you're going to obviously be picking the lower carb things. I don't love keto, but okay, we're all about sustainability. You really want to do it. It's celery and tomatoes and mushrooms, and on you go. If they're doing macros, they can obviously fit the fruits and veggies within their macros because it's just a fraction of that. I think the only diet it doesn't really work with is carnivore. And hopefully nobody is following that. I think that is probably one of the most harmful diet trends out there, literally harmful.
Yeah.
So we don't have to go into that, but I think the way to think about it is, yeah, you just pick the fruits and veggies that you like and overlay it on your caloric needs, your timing needs, and your preferences.
I think that's great. It really makes it accessible for truly anyone and everyone,
Hmm.
no matter what diet you're following.
Totally. And you don't, we keep picking up broccoli. You don't like broccoli, you don't like kale, don't eat it. Great. Eat green beans. Great. You want to do it all fruit? Great. Do it. Like people need to just sort of push themselves towards more fruits and vegetables and ditch this idea of like there's some perfect set of vegetables and fruits that I need to have. Yeah.
That's a good point. So, if someone really hates vegetables, they can do
Hmm.
all 800 grams in just fruit or vice
Yeah.
versa?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, I think people, one of the things out there is that, of course, fruit, quote, has too much sugar. It doesn't. Nobody is overeating fruit. Whatever. We don't need to go down that tirade, but maybe we will. But when we look at fruit on average, it's about 0.5 calories per gram. So this is if you're having things like blueberries and pineapple and apples, you have 800 grams of fruit, it's only going to be 400 calories. I'm going to tell you, you can leave Starbucks for a drink that has more than 400 calories. It's not too much sugar. So it's just, I encourage people to eat more of it. Now, if they were to do 800 grams of, let's say, just leafy greens or broccoli or I don't know, carrots, they're actually gonna be down closer to 200 to 300 calories. So even less than that. So fruit is really not that high in calories or sugar, despite what social media wants to tell you.
Okay, I love that. I love that because I definitely know some people who don't like fruit or don't like vegetables, so they'll be
Mm-hmm.
super happy to hear that.
Eat the options that you like. Yes.
I love that. Now, okay, we are gonna circle back to this tangent of
Yeah.
responding to people who say that the carbs in fruit are
Mm.
bad. How do
Mm.
we approach that?
Yeah, I try. I don't really do too much of the science in that type of conversation. I mean, there is the fact that we're just not getting that much sugar, and we can look at the dose, and we can look at studies with fruit, and yada yada. And there's all that evidence there, and that's fine and wonderful. But I don't really feel like studies convince people, especially in a conversation. I like sort of just bringing that reality check to it. Like, if fruit is our big problem, where is it?
Mm,
Where is it? Anytime you go anywhere, all we have is processed food. It's like you want to go to the gas station, it's processed food. You go to a drugstore, it's processed food. You go to a home goods store, there's processed food at the checkout. You go to a Marshall's or kind of a cheaper clothing store, there's processed food at the checkout. You go to the grocery store, there's processed food at the checkout. You go to the movie theater, there's processed food at the checkout. Where's the fruit? Where is the fruit? We're overeating it. Where is it? Like, I can't find it. I mean, yes, it's in the grocery store, but it's in this very specific area. And so I think there's a little bit of like, I'd love to see where people are always overeating this fruit.
mhm.
And I think that kind of reality checks it for people as opposed to trying to go into the studies, because there are quote experts out there, or even people who do have legit credentials who are saying crazy things online, and instead just kind of bring it back to this reality of like, where are all these people just overeating blueberries? I'd love to see them.
Yeah, that's such a good point. Also, to overeat blueberries, you'd have to eat so many blueberries.
So many. Yes, that's the thing, is you're going to stop. You're so full on water when you're eating these fruits and vegetables. That's actually what you're eating. You kind of want to think about like you're eating vitamin water. Now, it's actually better than the brand vitamin water because you have to chew and there's fiber and it sits in your stomach. You're eating so much water. And so you fill up on water before you've eaten too much sugar.
Yeah, I like that. I like that kind of, it's almost a visual of, yeah, you're eating your water, but it
You're
tastes way
eating water.
better because I hate
Yes.
plain water. So,
Yeah. Totally.
so what fruits and vegetables, in your opinion, do you think that people are sleeping on the most
Mm.
that they should maybe try to add in if they haven't already, or
Mhm.
what do you think?
I'm really into sustainability, so I just encourage people what they're going to eat. But I do like to also plug potatoes.
Mm,
I think they're one of those things that people will, again, oh my gosh, they're too high in carbohydrates. There's this super old study looking at the satiety of different foods, and it includes different vegetables, it includes fruits, it also includes all these different grain products and processed foods, it included meat as well. And potatoes were like off the charts for satiety. Like, people were so full off of potatoes, and it was a combination. There was a little bit of protein in there, it was fiber, it was also this low caloric density, lots of water and not a lot of calories. And so I even noticed that anecdotally for myself and also with clients. People talk about how full they feel after potatoes. And of course, that's like the old, steak and potatoes type dinner meal that we've heard about. And it's like, oh, maybe there was something to that. You know what I mean? So, and plus they're a good amount of grams. They can be delicious. So I think it's one of those things that has kind of been banished because of its quote carbs or sugar, when in reality, it's a really healthy option. It's a really filling option and people really enjoy them. So eat what you like, in terms of get all the fruits and veggies in the ways that you like, but a plug for potatoes if people are kind of holding out on them.
I love it. I love it because I think a lot of people do think of potatoes kind of in a negative way. So we got to get that out of there.
Yes, and again, not commercially fried, so the McDonald's French fries do not count for your 800-gram challenge. But yeah, air
Right.
fried at home, roasted at home, baked at home. They're all so delicious and worth it. Yeah.
Amazing. And what's your go-to? What are your go-to fruits
Mm.
and veggies?
Banana, definitely most days. Roasted sweet potatoes, cabbage, chickpeas, berries. Those are probably at least 80% of my cycle every day or every other day. Yeah.
Love it. That's awesome. Well, EC, there's a portion of my show here at the end where I love to ask all of my guests something that you think, because the fitness industry can be kind of toxic sometimes, we can admit.
Mm.
What do you think is something that we can absolve ourselves of the guilt and punishment of so that we're not feeling guilty about anything? It can be related to nutrition, it can be related to fitness, whatever you think.
Ooh. Hopefully, this is in line what you're thinking. To just get rid of all of the fear around food. There's so much fear mongering online about all of these things that you might have thought were fine or okay or healthy, and it turns out they are. We don't need to be afraid of all of these things in our grocery store. We don't need to be afraid of sugar in our fruit. We don't need to be afraid of carbs in our potatoes. We don't even need to be afraid of carbs in bread. A lot of this stuff comes down to dose. And so long as we get the right total kind of quality and quantity in our diet, the dose will be fine. But I lived in that neurotic space for a while, eliminating all these really healthy foods, following all these quote experts who had no clue what they're talking about and just getting your attention. And so I'd love for people to try to catch themselves when they might be getting caught into the crazy or pulled into the crazy, and sort of step back and try to reality check, like, is this really the problem? Is this really what I need to be paying attention to and worrying about in my diet?
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for sharing. And this is also why I am going to encourage everyone to follow you on the social media, because the things that you're posting, you are not fear mongering. You are telling the truth. You are giving us real information backed by science, again, that of just nutrition in general. And I love seeing what you put out there. And I know a lot of other people will as well. So if people do want to follow you on socials, where can they find you?
Yeah, well, thank you. I've followed all the crazy stuff for years, so now I am free of it, and to warning people at Optimize Me Nutrition, both on Instagram and Facebook. And then, yeah, my podcast is The Consistency Project.
Wonderful. Everyone, please go check it out. You will find a wealth of information. You can check out her website as well, Optimize Me Nutrition. She's got a lot of really good information there. You can also go there to sign up for the 800-gram challenge and to learn more about some coaching options that she has as well. So thank you again, EC, for joining me today. I'm so excited that we got to have this conversation and for people to hear it.
Yes, thank you. I hope your audience likes those fruits and veggies.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, everyone. That wraps up this episode of Talk Your Abs Off, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.